Welcome to Strategy Sessions by Thirsty Bandit Consulting, Episode 11, Authenticity. Hello, everybody. This is Corey Krajcek, and I'm here with Rachel Brown. And welcome to another riveting Strategy Sessions, our weekly podcast where we sort of dive into topics within wine and hospitality. And Rach, today, we were just talking about this offline, but, I had my producers of the show reach out to the guest, aka me, and I got a response right away, and it was almost like a fanboy moment because we've followed this winery for a long time. I mean, we were wine club members for a long time and pulled a lot of inspiration from what they were doing.
Yes,
So it's
we
just really neat
have,
to have a response and a willingness to join us on our what I refer to right now as a fledgling podcast. I'm not, have grand ideas of what we are currently.
yeah, no, it's neat. I'm actually really excited about this. I've been a big fan of Tank for a long time and how they market and who they are and the way that they approach the wine industry. So like I'm pretty pumped, to be honest with you.
So with all of that, our guest today is Ed Feuchuk. Feuchuk, am I saying that right? I
You
should.
are. Thank you. Yeah. Nailed
Look
it.
at my last name, Ed. You got it. I mean, I need a little bit of credibility because
Yeah. We can't all be Rachel Browns in
I
this world.
know, the easiest name in existence. It's true.
Corey, you must remember what it was like being in grade school and they're doing a roll and they're about to get to the K's and you just sort of preemptively raise your hand because they're about to just take a beat to pause before they pronounce your last name. But Rachel, not this plight. You've just had it easy your whole
I
life.
don't know. The only plate that I really know is that there's so many Rachels in the world that I had to be numbered. So usually Rachel 1, and then there was a Rachel 2, and then a Rachel 3. So that was the
Yeah.
only thing I really had to struggle with. But Brown's fairly easy.
Yeah. But
I mean,
anyways,
that
go
is
on,
your
guys.
real name. I mean, that's the question. Is it really your real name, Rach, or is it just a show name that you
Is it a stage name? Yes.
So Ed is the general manager over at Tank Garage Winery and out in Calistoga. And like I said, I don't know how we came across Tank originally, but Rachel and I for a very long time worked together at an East Coast winery, Chad's Ford Winery. And one of the things that we really wanted to instill within that winery was um just something different, not the typical tasting room experience. We had a progressively younger demographic, and we felt strongly that wine should be approachable and less pretentious. And we were dealing with Pennsylvania wines, so we really had to kind of make a point that it doesn't need to all be serious. And we just really loved what you were doing with the brand out there. It really resonated, and so we joined your wine club, followed you guys pretty closely for a number of years. And so when we were starting to think about guests, I naturally thought maybe we should just reach out to see. And this particular um podcast is going to be about wine clubs, and particularly wine clubs and DTC programs that don't suck. And so I just figured, why not reach out to Ed on LinkedIn and see if he'd get back to me. So Ed, with that kind of mini intro, tell us a little bit more about yourself. I mean, you were, I think, a day one, right, at Tank, if I read your, or close to, right, and
Yeah.
just kind of love
Day
the
zero.
history. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to give you some background on me, and I've spent almost all my career, which is nearly 2 decades in the wine industry. But I come from a digital marketing, or I guess digital development background. So out of college, I was doing sort of front end web development for this Yahoo subsidiary, and I was from Napa. I, went to the University of Florida, but then I came back to Napa, and there's lots of good wine jobs. And I got a job at a place called Elizabeth Spencer, and they were hiring for a digital marketing person because at that point it was kind of a nascent, novel thing to be like, we should get into, digital marketing and e-blasts, as they used to call them. And my skills came in handy because I could write, HTML and CSS. So back then there weren't these really powerful drag and drop email editors, so you would build things in tables. And I came in and they just sort of had me on the side doing stuff, and slowly but surely more and more stuff opened up to us because, wait, wouldn't it be cool if we started an online store? And so we shifted from, faxing orders into, hey, we have this online store. And by no means is it like comparable to what we have now, but back in the day, it was game changing. And so slowly but surely, I use those sort of digital skills to entrench myself into more and more of the wine business as the opportunities arose. And then sometime in, I guess, 2000, probably nine, I started doing some stuff for a guy named James Harder, who was partners with Jim Rigucci from Rigucci Winery. And they too needed help with stuff. So I started helping on the side. And then eventually they're like, come help us with our brands, which at the time was Rigucci Winery, James Cole Winery, T Vine Winery. And then we had a whole litany of wholesale brands. And so I came over and I did the same thing there. And so worked on those things. We opened another winery in Calistoga called T Vine Winery, I want to say in 2012. And at that point, there was a old historic gas station down the road, which I'm from Napa Valley. It's been here my whole life. It's been here since the 1930s. That we found out just from Jim Rigucci's contacts that hey, this is becoming available. And James, who's sort of like I always can say he's what the owner of Tank Garage Winery, but he's sort of our Donald Draper sort of visionary with without the bad parts of Donald Draper. He's like, let's get a hold of it and we can do something cool with it. And I think he had been, he's from Canada, but he had been inspired by um, he loved motor culture. He loved vintage California. And he had at one point visited a garage winery, I think in Washington State, and he's like, "Oh, we got to do something like that." So I guess he brought me along for the ride. So I've been around here since day zero, and we have all just sort of figured this thing out together. But now I'm the general manager, I oversee everything. Uh, Still have my hands in marketing, but yeah, we. I always tell people when they ask me what we do and or what I do, and I say I do cool shit, cool people, and that's sort of our business model.
Yeah, I mean, I love if you go on to the Tank website, I love the fact that you position the brand right out of the gate, basically stating that Napa didn't need another Tuscan villa, didn't need a modern farmhouse. What it needed was a garage. And so I know you talked a little bit about the inspiration, but I think over the 14-year history, it's had to been challenging, certainly from the outset, to develop a unique business in a region like that has been rooted in that sort of tradition. So if you could just kind of talk about, you know, the sort of the trials and tribulations and obviously what inspired you to start it and what's inspired you certainly to kind of evolve, right, as the industry continues to evolve.
That's a great question. So, well, I think what I'd say about Hank, and I attribute a lot of its success to this, is it was started the way a lot of great brands, both in the wine industry and outside the wine industry, are started, which is sort of on a whim. So it's not a product of like, a focus group or like a market opportunity analysis where, hey, we identified there need to be something different, or we identified that we need to make something for younger consumers. It's not contrived in that sort of way. It was really just, hey, or old garages are cool. We can do something cool in there. And then it's just been basically a scaffold for us to explore cool things that we're passionate about, from a winemaking perspective, from a storytelling perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a experientialist perspective. And I think that is what makes Tank such a great and compelling brand is one, it's an authentic brand and it feels that way. It has quirks about it. It has, weird nuances about it. And two is we're always just exploring things. And so ultimately that's our value proposition to people that come in here, which is we are this is going to feel real. It's not going to feel like a corporate contrivance. And we're going to take you on a little road trip. And so it will never be boring. We're going to keep exploring new stuff. We're going to keep telling cool stories. And that's sort of our mindset with Tank Garage Winery. If you ask, how did this started? I think it was this sort of, we just needed a place to explore our curiosities. And I know you two are both into experimental marketing, and I think we have always been into experimental marketing, and we had seen cool stuff from outside the wine industry that we wanted to do. A lot of stuff in streetwear, that were like, ah, it'd be cool if we could do something like that. So we're like, let's just do something like that. And that's where Tank is.
Yeah, I mean, I love cocktail napkin business plans, right? Are can be some of the most vibrant, successful, exciting brands that are out there. And you touch on something that I think is so critically important from an organizational development and a brand development perspective, which is passion. If you know your founder or your key staff or even your part-time tasting room staff don't have a passion and an enthusiasm for what they're doing, right? You can pick it up. Like you can sense it. And even in this current time frame, right? And this is sort of what I was alluding to with that question is that I think now more than ever, particularly on the West Coast, you probably have these established traditional brands saying, we got to shake it up. We've got to do something different. We've got to capture a younger demographic. Like, what's the formula? How do we do that? It it's not authentic. It's a business strategy, right? Because
Yeah.
it hasn't been formulated by people that we do this because it feels right. We do this because we want to do it. And that authenticity cannot be manufactured. And it's going to be a tough lesson. I think a lot of brands are going to learn over the next few years as the industry continues to kind of go through this reset.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's Zima, right? Which is, hey, we need an alcoholic beverage for the rising Gen Xer, right? We'll make this, and in a lot of ways, there are brands that are contrivances, and I think the thing that we've stayed true to is that we're not here to solve all the consumer needs for Gen Z or millennials or anything like that. We're here just to do cool shit we think is cool, and I think that resonates with people who share our values and share our tastes. And hopefully, in that sort of approach, we can have a brand that is more timeless versus something where they went to an agency in San Francisco and they gave them $500,000 and said, "We want to do a brand that targets Gen Z women." And they came back and they came up with some ideas, but they borrowed from a bunch of other ideas, and then they do a couple things for a couple years, and that kind of burns out, and they move on to the next thing. And that's not what we want to be. And I think that's what probably we're most proud of here. I don't know, but what have you guys done that in your wine experience that has been sort of a something born out of passion or just your own internal curiosity and not necessarily like there's a market demand for this. Let's see if we can address it.
H, you got one? I've got one, but if you've got one, I want to give you the
No,
opportunity.
I'll let you
Yeah.
take the floor, and
Well,
I'll jump in.
I mean, the first one that came off the top of my head, and thanks for asking the hosts a question, Ed. That's I think that might be a first for us.
We
That's
never get
plus.
It's
questions.
a
Right?
it's a
No one wonders.
podcast, guys.
Right, right. I mean, believe
Yeah.
me, we talk plenty on the podcast. It's just that we don't usually get questions posed to us. On the East Coast, particularly, the industry is now going into sort of the third generation. We're just starting to eke into the third generation. Pennsylvania, in particular, wine grapes haven't really been grown here since the early '70s, and that's a prohibition-based challenge that we ran into. So we're starting to feel our way, and quality has risen, and we've got a lot of really talented people on this side of the country now. But the industry is really born out of a lot of hybrid fruit, a lot of native fruit, and a lot of it gets bad raps. Um, the winery that we came from, that I was at for a decade, had a split portfolio. So we did dry vinifera. We had several contract growers who were doing some really amazing stuff, but they also grew hybrid. And we basically took some hybrid fruit that had been traditionally used for table wines or sweeter wines and made dry rosé out of it. And it was really the first of our experience of anyone ever doing that. I mean, what allowed us to do was assess the landscape. I mean, we knew that our customers were clamoring for dry rosé. We could only do so much Saignée method dry rosé out of the vinifera that we got. But we always felt that this grape known as Steuben, which originates out here on the East Coast, and it's a Tenturier grape, so the flesh is pigmented, so it kind of gives you that natural pinkish hue.
Yeah.
Had something to it that could really deliver as long as you could keep the acid in balance. And so a few years ago, we bottled it, completely stripped of any residual sugar, and it took off. And it's been wildly successful. And we were really proud of basically bringing something to the market that was sort of unfounded and kind of, kind of sticking her thumb up to the people that said, you can't make dry wines out of hybrid fruit. Although there are plenty of other examples where hybrid fruit is used, this was really, I think, our first real one that we'd ever seen done in a dry rosé style.
Yeah. Who came up with this idea? Were you guys sitting around eating pizza like at a break one day and someone's like, it'd be cool if somebody did this, and then someone else was like, yeah, we could do that. Is that how it happens with you guys? Because that's how it happens with us.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny, it's also funny because you're from Tank, because a lot of those strategy meetings, like a lot of the stuff where we would just spitball came out of monthly wine club chats. So we belong to, a bunch of different wine clubs around the country just to kind of give us inspiration. And, Rach, I don't, we used to pull in, our full-time staff, some of our part-time staff. We would just taste through on a Friday afternoon out on our patio and start talking about different ideas. I mean, I don't know where that original one was born, but a lot of ideas were born out of those meetings
Yeah.
with Tank Garage Wines probably consumed as well.
Good. Good. Rachel, do you have time to think of something?
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like my main passion with wine has just been education, right? Is like shining the light on things. So like you take the Steuben project and it became a dry rosé and then it became a sparkling rosé and then we started getting into piquettes and we started doing different styles of wine. And I think like my thing that I've always loved to just talk to people about to help them really understand, and this goes further than Pennsylvania wine, is just how ambidextrous all these grapes are and what they can do and how they can change and mold and how different styles of wine are made. So for me, it was always a really cool point of pride to be able to take the piquette that was made from Ed Feuchuk's and then talk about it in a blend, talk about it as a single varietal, talk about it. Like I just loved the, and I still love, not that that has faded, but just the side by side of the education and what we were able to do in PA is different and it sets us apart. And I really loved leaning into what made us unique, what continues to make us unique, and how we're evolving and changing, and people are starting to notice now. And it's been cool to be a part of that.
See, this is what I where I think the magic is, and we know internally with Tank, like I can tell you when a wine's going to be a hit before it's even bottled, and it's normally like it has a lot of the ingredients you just talked about. And this particular project you guys are talking about has a story in it. So when people are sitting with you guys or they're visiting your winery, you're going to tell them, if you're, I would tell them this story about how it came to be. And, all of our most exciting things are us approaching a wine that we know is going to have some sort of story we can tell. Now, sometimes it's a story of a variety or a region, or hey, we came up with this crazy idea to do this with this. Sometimes it goes back to maybe like the label or the Tank Cares project that we do it with. But all of our best projects have some sort of like compelling narrative to them, which is like there's a reason why we did this. It may not be a good reason, but it's interesting to follow, and I think that's what makes our consumers stick with us, is because we can keep telling them these cool stories. And that's what you get out of, experimenting, right?
Yeah, and the it's just such a cool thing to be able to offer. And then you take all of this, right? Like you take your storytelling, you take your really cool projects and your cool wines, and you have this really neat tasting room, and then you decide that you're gonna make your wine club, right? Like you're gonna start your made club. So
Yeah.
you take all of these really phenomenal ideas and wines and all these people who have like just such cool perspective on things, you funnel it into this project. So how does that integrate into like your tasting room and your other business channels?
The Maid Club. So, I mean, the Maid Club did start as like, we're a winery. We need to be financially sustainable, and a good way of doing that is through one of these, subscription models. And I do think back in the day we had some novel and innovative ideas with our wine club. And you got to think this is, we started talking about this in 2012, 2013. And so the first thing, if anyone's unfamiliar with Tank, all of our wines are direct to consumer only, so they're not in the wholesale market. They're all limited production and they're all one offs. So we don't make the same wine twice unless there's like, for a 10th anniversary retroed a couple things. But every single one is, we're only going to make, 100 cases of this. It's only going to be available for this amount of time. Then it's gone. And so from the start of it, we're like, there's a innate freshness and excitement that we can bring to potential members by joining this. And so every time somebody gets a new release, it's something they've never had before, nothing they've never experienced before. And I think that sort of allowed us to do some other creative things. So, back in the day, we were one of the first wineries, if not the first winery, to be like, members, you can customize these releases. Members, we're going to give you a bunch of flexibility. You can skip releases. Members are going to give you flexibility. You can change, the frequency or how often or when you want to get these releases. And so we've always just leaned into one, exciting new freshness, and then two, just flexibility and sort of personalization, which is something that we're trying to stay in front of now. But really, when it comes to like how our Made Club affects our business, is it's the core of our business, and I think because we frame it to people as it's more than just a transactional club that you get new wines to restock your wine fridge, a couple times a year. It's something that you feel you're a part of, that you express your identity through. We always say like, "Welcome to the resistance," which is sort of like, "Hey, you're sort of aligning yourselves with the I don't want to say like a villain, but the sort of anti-hero, which is we're the black sheep, we're the rebel, we're the outcast archetype." And so you come to Napa Valley, maybe you don't feel served by the traditional white gloves and Som Pin winery, but you feel entrenched in what we do, even though it can sometimes be very different and very polarizing and not for everybody, but that's for you. And so I think generally people feel that they're part of something more than just like a transactional wine club when they belong here. And because of that, they're good evangelists for everything else. So in terms of how it interacts with all of our other kind of channels, that's the be all end all. We want people to be a part of our membership, not just because it's a good way to sustain our business, but it's a way for us to do cool shit together. And so, most of our really exclusive limited releases are only for members, and they can only get access to them. A lot of our parties and private events and cool things we do, you can only get access to if you're a member. I think ultimately our proposition is we're going to do cool shit for you, as long as you want to be an audience for that, we're going to continue bringing it. And the more people we can get in that, the more crazy the stuff we can do. So I don't know if that meandering answer kind of gets at the point about how it interacts with everything, but I think because they're our core customer and they believe in the things we do the most, it gives us the confidence to push even further. And that benefits everyone else who, comes in here for a tasting and maybe isn't going to join the club.
I think that there's a huge missed opportunity for any wineries that don't fully leverage the connectivity that they have with wine club membership. I mean, you are sending something to people's homes that they are hopefully looking forward to, and they want more than just the bottles to consume. They want to be part of something bigger, and I think you do a really good job of conveying why the story matters, why the inclusion matters for something like that. And it is crazy for me to think that I would say more than half of the wine clubs that I've belonged to personally or through a business over, the last 2 decades don't send out anything with their wines. Either the wines just come as is, they make no recognition of you as a member, you get no swag, no merch, you get nothing except for basically the wine you pay for. And that's really disappointing to see, and I think that they missed the mark because 'cause they're using it purely as a revenue generating, an operating cash strategy, which is smart, but you have this ability to engage and amplify your brand when you do that. And actually, just for today, I'm wearing my tank shirt, which I got when I joined the club, and it's that gentle reminder in your drawer, right? Like you exist. And so I think you guys have done a great job of staying true to yourselves, but sharing that message and continuing to amplify the brand for people that want to be part of that club. Um, and I know that the one-offs are such an intriguing piece of this because it is such a different approach than most traditional wineries and most traditional wine clubs. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of those traditional wine clubs where it's like vintage after vintage. I mean, like I get it. Like it's nice to try a variance between the 22 harvest and the 23 harvest and kind of tasting the nuances that each one brings. But they, to me, they all kind of get stale unless you're amassing a major collection, in your wine cellar. I want variety, I want story, I want something different. Um, but I guess it's got to be challenging to a degree from a production strategy perspective and a marketing strategy perspective, because you are constantly churning out new stuff, new SKUs, new label approvals, new marketing copy, new collateral. I mean, you really can't reuse anything, right? So, I mean, can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about that dynamic behind the scenes?
Yeah. So production's hard here for sure. And it starts with, we have 20 to 30 different SKUs every single year. They're all one-offs. We've worked with probably 80 different varieties of grapes. We source stuff from Mendocino all the way down to Los Angeles. There's a lot of variables, which is exciting because we can do a lot, but there's a lot of variables, which takes a lot of work. And so the way we kind of approach it is we do have structure. So we know, next year, a couple years from now, 3 years from now, more or less kind of what we think we need to get. And there's spots for wines that have, I guess, lineage or continuity with previous wines we made. So they're not exactly the same, but it's like, hey, if you liked our um, sparkling rosé pet nat last year, we have this new one this year called Spacey Jane. Here's what's different about it. It's slightly, more effervescent. And then we have space for sort of experimental stuff because experimenting is critical to what we've done here. And so we know there's a bunch of things that we need to fill for, and then there's a bunch of kind of latitude for us to explore. And so, like even like today, we came up with that idea where we want to. We've done this thing called a passamento on red grapes, which is a kind of old world Italian thing where you get grapes and you dry them out, and it sort of concentrates the sugar and the acidity in them. But we came up with this idea, which is like, hey, how come no one ever does that with white grapes? And now we're like, let's see if we can find some Vermentino and pick it like in 2 days and figuring out what we want to do. So we always have enough latitude and budget to explore these things because they may not all hit, but we know that if we continue to chase things we're passionate about and tell interesting stories, that it will help our business out. But from operational perspective, like you talked about, yeah, and there's probably no winery more familiar with the cola process than us. Yeah, I mean,
The
I
TTV
honestly, the
They
applications.
know you
Yeah.
by
TTV
name. They're
application.
like, oh, it's that again. Here we go.
Well, let me tell you something. I've petitioned to add multiple varieties to the TTV's list. I don't know. This is a deep cut here, but for the longest time, the TTB only recognized Cinso without the L, and I successfully petitioned for them to recognize the spelling of Cinso with an L, which is how it is spelled through the majority of the world. So super familiar with that. And from a marketing perspective, it is a lot of work, which is it's not it's this is not we have an awesome marketing department, but it's not a job for people that like cookie cutter marketing where you just sort of here's the best practice. I'll throw this in this template because every single time it's a new story, it's a new aesthetic, and you're going to ramp up and you're going to launch products. So even in the bigger corporate wineries, I don't think there is anybody as seasoned as we are at like doing creating new mini brands and doing product launches because every single one is unique and different, and we've done 300 of them and we do several of them a year, and it is something where we took more from streetwear and less from the traditional I want to say like the Mandavi model. And so it's a lot of work and it's exhausting, but it's awesome because we get to do the cool shit. And if you do the cool shit, then the people will recognize it. So it's a double-edged sword. It's a lot of work. Sometimes we go down a path and, we had a wine, I don't know if you can bleep this out. We had a wine called Fuck Yeah that the TTB gave us a lot of bad feedback for. And, we had to like put an asterisk in there last second. But if you kind of like a renegade marketing style and doing things quick and efficiently, like they might do at Kith or they might do at Supreme, this is a good job for you because that's the type of stuff we do.
Yeah, it also reminds me a lot about the early years of the craft beer industry, and we took we take a lot of inspiration from that,
Mm.
where you have these one-off beers, you have crazy names, they're not flagship, they're only being poured in the tasting rooms, and
Yeah.
it gave breweries the ability to just experiment and just come up with a bunch of crazy stuff that once the kegs were kicked, they maybe never go back to it before. And I don't think our industry has enough of that experimentation. But yeah, it's certainly one of the things that makes you guys super unique. And if you are the one personally handling all of those cola submissions, that's a job unto itself.
No, we have a team that does them now, but I've done a bunch and I've had to intervene on a bunch of stuff. Like the Cinsa thing is an
Yeah.
example, which is like, we don't want to call it this. Everyone else calls it Cinsa with an L. Why can't we do this? And they're like, it's not listed. And I'm like, how do you get it listed? And they're like, you'd have to petition. And we're like, let's do it. So that's how those things come about.
Yeah, we've been there and we consult with a bunch of, up and coming wineries, people that get into the industry that have no experience in the industry, and the whole label development and approval process is a very foreign thing if you've never been in industry before.
I have a good story actually. I just thought about it. We know when things aren't going well with the TTB when our labels get stuck in like this review status, and it's like this purgatory they put us in, because we've sent them stuff that kind of pushes, it has profanity in it or nudity in it, which I think the TTB stepped away from being like sort of the arbiters of like taste. But one time we were throwing an industry party, and we're like, we're gonna make a special wine just for this party. You can only get it for this party. And we came up with an idea for a wine called Government Warning. And it was the label was literally the government warning, but we changed all the words to be like, it's not about your restoration hardware furniture. It's not about, your caves. It's about getting your hands dirty. Like it's kind of like this manifesto of like making wine for the right reasons, and then it ended with "Never Dream Alone," which is our slogan. And that one went into a deep purgatory with the TTB. They were very uncertain about that one, and we ultimately had to bail on it and didn't get to release it as we wanted to. Um, but yeah, we have a great relationship with the TTB now.
I love that. I love that. I love that you get that in life, right? When you send an email or you text and like it's been all these responses back, rapid responses back and forth, then you throw to someone and they don't really know how to digest it. So they just sort of sit on it.
Silent, just silence in the void for a couple of days, and you're rethinking your life choices. Yeah, people.
Yeah, we're like, maybe we shouldn't have pushed it.
It's we were just literally even saying before you got on the call. It's one of my favorite things about you guys is how you brand yourself and how you carry yourself and the marketing initiatives that you do. Like I love it. I think it's so cool and I think it adds a different layer to the wine industry than what we're used to. And this is something that prompts a lot of discussion, and we ask the people that come on, the podcast this regularly is if you could change something or many things about the industry, even with all of the waves that y'all have made, which are huge fan of again, like what else would you change? What else would you want to do?
Oh my gosh. I mean, where do you start with the number of headwinds affecting the wine industry right now? I mean, there's a lot of things you could talk about, from wildfires to insurance costs, and just consumer changes. But I think the one thing that is good for the industry, and I don't mean this to sound like a cop out because this has sort of been the theme of our discussion, is now is the time to experiment. Like now is not the time to get more conservative. Now is not the time to live, you know, quarter to quarter by jacking up your prices. Now's the time to experiment. And I think the cool thing about experimenting, is you all discovered, is this is the way we move forward. This is how we discover what's going to resonate with consumers. And so all the things that are like, considered best practices or common practices, especially in marketing, is like at one point somebody had to deviate from the old best practices to say, I'm going to try doing this, I'm going to experiment doing this. And maybe it didn't work, or maybe it learned and informed the next thing they did. But um, shaking things up and taking risks and trying things out and trying weird things out and doing stupid stuff is the way forward. And most of those things are going to fail or not really prove to be useful, but you're going to find something that's going to push you forward. And so I think the thing that I would love to impart on the wine industry now is like, now's not the time to get conservative. Now's the time to get wild. Now's the time to get weird. Now's the time to experiment because you are going to find something that pushes your brand forward or keeps it afloat or, connects with the, Gen Alpha. If we all can commit to doing that, we're all going to find out next best practices and we're all going to find out what to do next. And that is the way to keep this industry around for the next 20, 30, 40, 100 years. But that's just my stupid opinion.
No, it's interesting that you take that approach because I think that as an early adopter, not even that, I mean, you guys have just done what's felt right really for the last almost 15 years. You're gonna have a lot of people that are going to be looking, for the fix, right? They're gonna be looking to experiment, but maybe some of that looks a little bit more like what has made tanks successful. So I think that is there a natural concern that there'll be some copycat brands, particularly in your neck of the woods, trying to sort of crack that code, and then all of a sudden there's, you know, 4, 5, 6 other tank concepts in your backyard?
There's no fear from us. We're not concerned about what other people are doing. We're only concerned about the stuff we think are cool. And if I'm gonna be honest with you, I've seen several brands attempt to emulate what we do and do it unsuccessfully. And they stop posting on Instagram, and then they close their tasting rooms, and they're not around because they don't have the vision, they don't have the approach that we do. So I'm not concerned at all about that. I want to continue to experiment, and if we figure out something cool and people, other wineries can learn from it and improve their, the way they market or the way they talk to their customers, then that's probably good for the entire industry. Um, but I'm not worried about anyone sort of, stealing our business because they're better at being tank than we are, because there's no one like us. And the one thing that we always talk about internally is there's this awesome quote, uh, that's that we kind of live by. That's, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I promise it won't be boring. And if we can all sort of embrace our inner Ziggy Stardust, I think we'll be fine doing that. But no, I'm not worried about that. And in fact, I'll be honest with you, there's been times where we have done things and we were the first people to do them and we got the benefit of being the first people to do them. And then we saw other wineries start to do it. And that was a good sign to be like, it's time to move on. It's time for us to do something different. Like I'll give you a couple examples, which is we were one of the first wineries, I think, to really embrace a lot of non-winery direct marketing techniques. And so, customer funnels and automations and drips and flows and SMS marketing. And if it's 2015 and no one's doing it, then it's really cool and compelling that we're the only ones doing it. But now everyone's doing it. And it's like, it's time for us to evolve because we're not standing out anymore. And our big thing is marketing's about standing out versus fitting in. And so a lot of the things that we used to do that were really successful, we're gutting. So you're not going to go to our website right now and then wait 2 seconds and there's going to be a pop-up that comes up on the screen asking for your email address so that we can send you a welcome 10 coupon code. We're trying to be really thoughtful about our fulfilling our promise to customers, which is we're going to show you cool stuff. And there's nothing more uncool than a pop-up window on your website to give you a 10% off code. And there's got to be a better way of doing that or a cooler way of doing that, especially if it's your first digital interaction with somebody. So when we see other people doing things like that, it's like we need to reinvent ourselves or evolve or do something more innovative or different because we're no longer standing out, we're fitting in now. So that's kind of where we're at. It may not work, but that's our mentality.
I love it. I mean, Ed, you've given quite a bit of free advice to our industry partners, whoever they may be listening to this podcast. And I love what you said, sort of towards the end there about the quote about, I don't know what we're going to be doing next, but I promise you, it's not going to be boring. I think that mantra in general could be applied to all of the industry. If everyone just asked themselves that question, I think that and asked real humans and not their AI overlords that question to come up with some real, true, authentic answers, we'd all be better for it. Um,
Yeah.
this has been a tremendous amount of fun. We really appreciate you coming on. Don't be a stranger. You know, uh, don't be surprised if we ask you back in season 3 or season 4 so that we can get some more insight from you. But I've really enjoyed this. Rach, I know you've enjoyed it as well. You'll be opening your wine tonight with your Tank Garage. FU,
You already know.
correct?
Bottles queued up.
All right. Before we leave, I want to say this. Thank you for having me on and allowing me this platform to espouse my uh, controversial views on the wine industry. I love talking to people like you because I think you love experimenting. I think that this podcast is a great example of it. Um, and I wanted to ask you all-time favorite marketing experience experiments. What would they be for you, Corey, and what would they be for you, Rachel? Whether they worked or not, because sometimes some of mine are failures.
Gotta think about that.
All-time favorite.
All
So,
time fate.
all right,
Well,
I'll give you time. I'll hop in. I'll set the stage, and maybe it'll dislodge an idea that you might have floating around up there, Rach. Again, like one of the things we've talked about, one of the reasons why we launched Thirsty Bandit was because the industry is having a hard time right now. And being an East Coast winery, I feel like we've always possessed, we've had this chip on our shoulder, we've had this moxie that like we've had to work harder sometimes for foot traffic. We've had to defend that quality wines were being produced on the East Coast, and we just had to be super creative and how to get people through the door. So in many instances, it's forced us to really walk that line, right? Where we're doing things because we just think they'd be super fun for people to do. But an outsider looking in say, well, that might undermine the integrity of what's in the bottle, which it didn't, but it would give us a platform to draw people in. We started a murder mystery program at the winery like 10 years ago, 9, 10 years ago. And then when the pandemic hit, we actually launched a virtual murder mystery as part of like a DTC project, right? It was like, we'll ship the wine to you, just log on to Zoom at this point, and then you can sit down and do that. The problem is like there's no like murder mystery company out there that's going to give you like a pre-baked, like, here's your script for your virtual murder mystery program. So every murder mystery we've done, we wrote the entire script. We wrote the clues, we did everything, including the virtual murder mystery program, which really, really took off. Even after the pandemic, we had people saying they preferred it because they would host parties at their own houses. Like we had people zooming in, like they'd be on the Zoom screen and there'd be 20 people in the room listening to the dialogue for the murder mystery, and they're having a party there, and you could be like, they're like, be quiet, they're giving clues, and it was just this, we developed this thing that we just sort of took off, but it was really more of like a survival tactic. It was, what can we do to draw more people in and experience the wines? And it just took on sort of this whole other role for the winery. And it was also a Q1 strategy, as we all struggle with first quarter sales. It was always
Yeah.
trying to drive traffic in January.
yeah, Murder Mystery was a beast. It was a lot of fun, and we wrote them every year, and it was really cool to see people come back over and over again. And maybe this isn't quite underneath that umbrella, but one of the things that I really loved that we did was kind of the slogan that we gave, which was wine for everyone, which I really liked, because as you have people coming in who maybe don't know anything about wine or do know a lot about wine, it kind of just like set a tone for them that at the bar or in the lounge or wherever they were, they had a seat. Like, our wine is for everyone. We will find a wine for you no matter what you drink, no matter what learning level you're at. And that, I think, really kind of transcended into some other stuff. And one of my favorite projects that we actually did, Corey and I did this together, was we had an off-dry red blend called Chatsford Red that disappeared into the ether, and we decided that we weren't gonna make this wine again. And customer response was rage because they loved it. So we're like, okay,
It
like,
was chillable, off
yeah,
dry,
1%, like, so easy, so easy. So, like, the call came and we were like, "All right, but let's, like, dress it up." So it became Good Vibes Only, which was one of my favorites because that was kind of, like, what it encapsulated, and our winemaker ended up tapping the tanks, and we watercolored with wine in the cellar for what? Like, an hour. We did different splotches, and we really, like, it was neat to be able to tell people about the wine, the story, the splashes on the label, what juice came from what, and then that turned into the Rolling with the Punches project that came later on down the road, how you kind of go with the flow. And I liked the reach that we were giving people, that they could take these wines and these stories and these slogans and feel like again they were a part of them. And it was something that they wanted to share. And I liked the reach that we were giving people.
Yeah, the Good Vibes Only project, that watercoloring project, originally, we were like, "Maybe we'll create some art to put on one of the tasting room walls for fun." And I had my kids at the winery that day, and they were in the cellar, and we just equipped them with paintbrushes and, like, 5 different, wines to just kinda go at it. And then that spring, we were rethinking the packaging for Good Vibes Only, and we were sitting on this art that we wound up not using for anything else, and it wound up being the label. So it was sort of 2 different projects that converged, later, but I think the art actually really encapsulated what we were trying to deliver on what the wine was. So it was, yeah, it was sort of a fun, fortuitous turn of events.
Yeah.
See? Well, thank you for sharing, Corey, and thank you, Rachel. Murder mystery sounds cool. Good vibes only, even cooler. But see, this is what the wine industry needs. Quit screwing around, copying other wineries, and just come up with cool ideas, see if they work. Some of them won't, some will, but it's the way forward.
Yeah, I wish we were, like, bellied up at the bar right now with a glass in hand, because this is the kinda dialogue that usually comes out of those moments, so Ed, no, seriously, thanks again. We really appreciate it. Hopefully, we can get out there. I know, Rach and I are hopeful to get out to Unified in January again, and we've been talking about potentially popping over, either before or after. So if we do, I'll reach out so we can see the space and have a chat.
Well, I'm going to interject there briefly. I am on the marketing steering committee for the Unified Symposium in January, and we would love to have you there. And if there are any other winery professionals that are considering coming out, it's a great place to truly be unified with every element of the wine industry, from grape growing to marketing, packaging, you name it. There's some awesome parties. And then, if you stick around another week, I'm also a member of the Direct to Consumer Wine Symposium Steering Committee. And we have awesome conference in Monterey every single year. And it's the biggest direct to consumer wine marketing conference, I think, in the world, but definitely in the Western Hemisphere. And it is the place to go to learn what all the cool wineries are doing, the people that are being successful, what tactics and strategies they're employing. You get to meet a lot of amazing people within the wine industry. And it's in Monterey. It's a beautiful venue. And if you're down there, Corey, Rachel, we also have a Tank Garage Winery tasting room in Paso Robles now, which I don't know if you've had a
All
chance to
that, yeah.
experience. So we got some cool stuff in the Central Coast too.
That's amazing. Well, if you wanna hang out with me, Rachel, and Ed, book your flights now, and, we'll see y'all in in California in January. Thanks again, tankgaragewinery.com. Please go check them out, follow them on socials. And, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to that. A couple more months. We'll hopefully see you guys in person.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for Strategy Sessions. Please subscribe, like, follow, share at Thirsty Bandit Co.